Welcome everyone, I'm Ukrainian, living in Ukraine. I understand English and consume a lot of English language content, but I've never had the chance to practice speaking it. So I wrote this script myself and used an AI voice to deliver it. Every idea, every analysis, every word in this video is mine. The AI only speaks them. I speak both Ukrainian and Russian fluently, which allows me to work directly with primary sources and understand the full context of this war. Right now, on the battlefields of the Russian-Ukrainian war, a real drone revolution is taking place in military science. New technologies are being born, tested, and adapted at an astonishing speed. I carefully study primary sources, official documents, and frontline reports. I also watch detailed interviews with Ukrainian soldiers, commanders, and drone developers, conversations where unique details and important context often emerge that you won't find anywhere else. That's why on this channel I bring you accurate, verified, and truly up-to-date information about the latest military innovations that are being created and immediately used on the battlefield. If you want to understand not just what new drones and technologies are appearing, but why they matter, how they actually perform in real combat conditions, and what real difference they make for Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines, you're in the right place. Thank you for joining me as we explore the intersection of technology, history, and the lived experience of this conflict through the lens of those who are shaping it. Today we're diving deep into one of the most important new developments in tactical reconnaissance, the SOKIL drone, built by Ukrainian company Vary Industries. I'll explain in detail why this drone matters so much and why its appearance on the battlefield is a significant moment. Let's get into it. Reconnaissance is the eyes and ears of an army. Whoever sees the enemy first gains a decisive advantage, the ability to direct artillery fire, identify enemy positions, supply depots, logistics routes, and reserve forces, and to plan operations with maximum efficiency. Armies that maintain persistent drone coverage over the front line consistently outperform those that don't. Modern warfare demands constant situational awareness, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Gaps in reconnaissance are gaps in survival. The front line shifts by the hour, and the price of being caught off guard is measured in human lives. Reconnaissance drones also serve as active guidance systems for other weapons. They provide real-time correction for artillery fire and even guide strike drones directly onto their targets. The reconnaissance drone stays above the battlefield, tracking the target and feeding live data to the operator, who then directs the strike drone onto the target. Every corrected strike means fewer shells wasted and faster destruction of the target. Over weeks and months of combat, that adds up to a measurable difference in both ammunition expenditure and battlefield outcomes. In 2022, at the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine had only a limited number of Bayraktar TB2, a Turkish-made, medium-altitude, long-endurance operational tactical strike unmanned aerial vehicle. In the first days of the war, it proved extremely effective, detecting and destroying high-value targets. But once the front stabilized and Russian air defense became more organized, these drones, due to their large size, became easy targets for radar systems. Large reconnaissance strike UAVs against a country with a fully functional and organized air defense system simply become easy prey. Russian aggression, however, began much earlier, in 2014, with the occupation of Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine. From that point on, several Ukrainian companies started developing reconnaissance drones. By 2022, relatively widespread systems included Leleka and Furia UAV. But for a full-scale war with a front line stretching over 1,600 kilometers, or 1,000 miles, they were far from sufficient. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Ukraine saw a massive influx of volunteers. The army grew from around 250,000 to nearly 1 million personnel. Some volunteers brought their own civilian quadcopter drones and began using them for reconnaissance. The most widespread among them became the Chinese-made DJI Mavic, which proved highly effective in real combat conditions. Small informal teams began forming around these drones, eventually evolving into full-scale drone units. Over time, Ukraine even became the first country in the world to establish a separate military branch dedicated to unmanned systems, the Unmanned Systems Forces. Although some Ukrainian soldiers had used civilian drones before 2022, it was mostly private initiative rather than systematic state supply. After the full-scale invasion, it started with individual soldiers, then expanded through numerous volunteer organizations, and eventually the state created a system where frontline reconnaissance is now largely carried out by slightly modified civilian drones, primarily Mavic, Matrix, and Auto models. At the same time, Ukraine began developing new fixed-wing reconnaissance drones. In addition to Lelica and Furia, new models appeared such as Shark, Shark Mini, Raybird 3, PD2, and many others. These drones are used for reconnaissance at greater distances than quadcopters. In the early years, Western partners also supplied a limited number of their reconnaissance UAV, but most performed poorly and were quickly destroyed. The reason was simple: those countries had designed them for wars against insurgents or technologically weak opponents who lacked modern electronic warfare systems. Russia, on the other hand, possesses some of the world's most advanced EW capabilities. As a result, most Western drones showed little effectiveness in the Russia-Ukraine war. Over time, the Russians also adopted Ukrainian tactics. They began using Chinese Mavic drones for frontline reconnaissance, while relying on the Orlan 10 as their main fixed-wing reconnaissance platform. Later, Zala and Supercam models appeared. These became the most mass-produced Russian fixed-wing reconnaissance drones. Russia, as a centralized state, is highly effective at scaling military production. They ramped up manufacturing and saturated the skies over Ukrainian forces with reconnaissance drones. Because these drones operate at higher altitudes, they are nearly impossible to shoot down with small arms. Taking them out required manpads or larger air defense systems, but missiles were quickly depleted. No country in the world produces enough anti-aircraft missiles to counter such numbers. There were periods when Russian drones operated deep inside Ukrainian territory. Ukrainian forces could see them, but often lacked the missiles to engage them. The Russians built an effective reconnaissance strike loop. Their drones provided real-time targeting data, allowing ballistic missiles to destroy valuable Ukrainian equipment. That is when Ukrainians took another step in the military technology revolution. Starting in the summer of 2022, they began modifying commercial FPV racing drones into kamikaze strike drones. Due to a severe shortage of artillery shells, these FPV drones were used en masse to destroy Russian armored vehicles and infantry. By late 2023 and early 2024, the first reports emerged of Ukrainian FPV drones shooting down Russian reconnaissance UAV. With some modifications, such as the ability to climb to higher altitudes while maintaining signal, cheap FPV drones costing around $500 began successfully intercepting Russian reconnaissance drones worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. This dramatically shifted the balance. Russian reconnaissance drones could no longer operate freely over the front line. As I mentioned earlier, the Russians are very good at copying and scaling Ukrainian innovations. They also started using drones to hunt Ukrainian reconnaissance UAV. And because Ukraine operates with fewer resources, it once again had to innovate. As mentioned earlier, reconnaissance is critical. It is the eyes of the army. And this is where we come to one of Ukraine's largest drone manufacturers, Vayry Industries. It's interesting that the word Vayry means mythical place in Slavic mythology, where birds fly for the winter and souls go after death, that is sometimes identified with paradise. Spring is believed to have arrived on Earth from Vayry, and storks carried unborn souls from Vayry to Earth. Vayri Industries is one of many Ukrainian companies that emerged after Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 and has grown into one of the world's largest drone producers. From the very beginning, they focused on FPV kamikaze drones and now manufacture hundreds of thousands per year. Over time, these FPV drones have been significantly upgraded and now fly much greater distances. As both sides scaled up their use, the so-called gray zone expanded, pushing targets deeper into enemy territory. Because the range of quadcopter drones is limited, the need for longer-range fixed-wing drones has grown significantly. The chief executive officer of Vayri Industries, Oleksiy Babenko, decided that the company needed to expand into fixed-wing drones. Developing new drone types from scratch takes a lot of time, so he chose to find promising startups with ready-made solutions. To motivate the inventors to continue improving their products, he acquired 51% of several startups, while leaving 49% of the profits with the original developers. One of them was a modernized Ukrainian version of the Russian Molniya kamikaze drone, now called Bliskavka, Lightning. Another was a drone mother, capable of carrying 2 FPV drones under its wings to extend their range, named Verazon. And the third one is our main hero today, the SOKIL. Brave One is a government of Ukraine platform to bring together innovative companies with ideas and developments that can be used in the defense of Ukraine. It's a fascinating ecosystem and definitely deserves a separate video. In September 2025, during one of the meetings, Brave One representatives told Oleksiy Babenko, CEO of Vayri Industries, about a promising new drone. He met with the developers, who presented a system built around a well-thought-out concept, a low-cost fixed-wing reconnaissance platform. Babenko didn't even wait for a test flight. He immediately understood the potential and offered them a contract. Now, to understand why this drone matters, we need to look at the bigger picture. A clear situation has formed on the battlefield. Short-range reconnaissance is handled by small and inexpensive quadcopters like the Mavic, Matrix, or Autel. All other reconnaissance tasks rely on fixed-wing drones, which the Russians have begun systematically shooting down with their FPV interceptor drones. Losing a Ukrainian fixed-wing reconnaissance drone, costing $20,000 to $100,000, to a Russian FPV interceptor, worth just $500, is a painful mathematical defeat in a war of attrition, especially considering that Russia has significantly more resources than Ukraine. This created a need for a fixed-wing reconnaissance drone that could occupy the niche between cheap quadcopters and expensive high-end reconnaissance UAV. This would allow the more costly systems to be reserved for deep reconnaissance missions, where the loss of a drone could be justified by discovering high-value enemy targets. The new drone's task was to handle short and medium-range reconnaissance. Since these zones are saturated with Russian FPV interceptors, high losses are inevitable. Therefore, the drone had to be cheap. This is achieved by simplifying the design. It doesn't need to be overly technological, it just needs to perform its job reliably. Oleksiy Babenko immediately recognized these necessary qualities in the SOKIL drone and quickly decided to acquire the startup. At first, the original developers thought the drone would cost around $8,000. However, after merging with Vayri Industries, a company with extensive experience in mass production, they managed to reduce the price of the SOKIL to just $4,000. This puts it in roughly the same price range as quadcopter drones, and many times cheaper than the most affordable fixed-wing reconnaissance UAV. Let's take a closer look at this drone. The name SOKIL translates from Ukrainian as falcon. Just as people centuries ago launched falcons for falconry, today Ukrainians launch SOKIL drones to hunt the occupiers. SOKIL is an electrically propelled light tactical fixed-wing reconnaissance UAV, featuring a high-wing configuration. The wing is mounted at the top of the fuselage, providing an unobstructed downward field of view for payload optics and natural lateral/dihedral stability. The wing is designed with a high aspect ratio to maximize lift while minimizing induced drag, significantly enhancing flight endurance. SOKIL uses a tractor propulsion configuration with the electric brushless DC motor and propeller mounted at the nose of the aircraft, ahead of the wing. The propeller pulls the aircraft forward through undisturbed air, which is aerodynamically slightly more efficient than a pusher arrangement and simplifies motor cooling. The aircraft utilizes a V-tail design. This setup is technically efficient as it combines the functions of a vertical fin and a horizontal stabilizer into two canted surfaces. This reduces the total surface area, lowering both parasitic drag and overall weight. It also minimizes the drone's radar cross-section and protects the tail surfaces during rough landings. Control is managed through mixed ruddervator inputs. The airframe is constructed from composite materials, including fiberglass and carbon fiber laminates, providing high structural stiffness at low weight, which is critical for operation in field conditions. Modern battlefield requirements force drone designers to make their systems modular and easy to transport. They must be assembled and disassembled quickly with minimal effort. The SOKIL follows this principle. Its wings and tail are detachable, allowing the entire aircraft to fit into a relatively compact transport case. This is a lightweight drone, just 8 kilograms, about 18 pounds, which makes hand launching possible without the need for a catapult. This significantly simplifies and speeds up deployment. The modern battlefield is saturated with drones, both reconnaissance and strike. In today's war, drones have become the primary means of destruction. Ukrainian forces already eliminate the vast majority of enemy targets using unmanned systems. As a result, drone operators themselves have become priority targets. Once a launch position is detected, it can be engaged with everything available, including expensive ballistic missiles. A longer and more complex launch process only increases that risk. Hand launching gives SOKIL a clear advantage. It requires no additional equipment and takes only seconds, allowing the operator to deploy the drone and immediately return to cover. Since it is relatively light, landing is performed as a controlled skid landing on the fuselage. The use of this landing method enables a reduction in weight, size, and cost through the omission of a parachute landing system. In terms of price, SOKIL is roughly comparable to small quadcopter reconnaissance drones such as Mavic and similar systems. These drones remain essential and will continue to play their role, but SOKIL offers several important advantages for short and medium-range reconnaissance. Quadcopter drones are typically limited to a range of about 8 kilometers into enemy territory. This forces operators to stay relatively close to the front line, where the concentration of enemy strike drones is the highest. A fixed-wing drone allows operators to work from a much safer distance. Another limitation of quadcopters is endurance. Their total flight time is usually around 40 minutes, including the time needed to reach the front line and return. The actual time available for reconnaissance is even shorter. To maintain continuous coverage, units often rotate drones, sending a second drone toward the front line before the first one runs out of power. This is necessary because Russian forces frequently use small infiltration groups, and even a short gap in aerial surveillance can have serious consequences. SOKIL changes this dynamic. Its flight time starts at around 2.5 hours and can be even longer under favorable conditions. This means fewer launches and landings, which directly reduces the risk of exposing the operator's position. To support the system, Veyri Industries developed a specialized, compact, and mobile ground control station. It features 2 integrated displays. One is used for flight control, navigation, and route planning, allowing the operator to define the mission rather than manually pilot the drone at all times. The second display is dedicated to the video feed, where the operator controls the camera and searches for targets. All necessary interfaces are built directly into the station, including controls for both communication and system management. There are also integrated compartments for charging peripherals, such as the joystick and mouse. The system can be expanded by connecting external displays through built-in high-definition multimedia interface ports. The ground station can operate for up to 12 hours using internal batteries, which are unified with the drone's own power system. This allows the aircraft batteries to be charged directly from the station, ensuring continuous operation of the entire system. Electronic warfare plays a critical role in the Russian-Ukrainian war. This is one of the most actively evolving aspects of the conflict. There is a constant struggle between jamming systems and drone communication technologies. Changes happen extremely fast. In some cases, a system can become outdated in a matter of weeks. This is one of the main reasons why many Western drones have performed poorly in this war. They were designed for conflicts against insurgents or technologically weaker opponents without advanced electronic warfare capabilities. In Ukraine, even satellite navigation signals are often jammed. In many areas, global positioning system signals do not work even at the drone launch sites, and sometimes not even deep behind the front lines, where they are deliberately suppressed to protect against enemy drones. The navigation system of the SOKIL unmanned aerial vehicle, developed by VERI, implements an alternative positioning approach based on ground-based radio beacons rather than satellite navigation. Conceptually, it is analogous to a global navigation satellite system, but instead of satellites, the system relies on pre-deployed transmitters. On territory controlled by the Ukrainian side, a network of 3 beacons is deployed. These beacons are installed on buildings, towers, trees, or other elevated objects. If reconnaissance is conducted at a distance of 50 kilometers into enemy territory, the beacons are typically placed about 10 kilometers apart, roughly at the same depth from the front line where the drone is launched. Each beacon is a relatively inexpensive device that can operate for more than a week without recharging. Each beacon acts as a radio signal source with known coordinates. During flight, the onboard system simultaneously receives signals from multiple beacons and estimates the distance to each of them based on signal characteristics such as propagation delay or signal strength. Using multilateration techniques, the unmanned aerial vehicle calculates its position in space. Before the mission, the operator defines the flight path, after which the unmanned aerial vehicle can follow it autonomously without continuous control or communication. This enables a fire-and-forget operational mode within the predefined route. The primary purpose of this system is to ensure reliable navigation in environments where electronic warfare systems actively disrupt or deny global positioning system signals and radio communication links. In such conditions, beacon-based navigation maintains route control and mission execution even in the absence of satellite navigation and operator link. As a result, the system fulfills 2 key roles: navigation, position determination and route tracking, and resilience, reduced dependence on vulnerable global navigation satellite system signals and communication channels. Overall, beacon-based navigation significantly enhances the survivability and autonomy of reconnaissance unmanned aerial vehicles operating in electronically contested environments, without the need for extremely expensive anti-jamming controlled reception pattern antenna systems used in satellite navigation. Another smart engineering solution on the SOKIL drone is its retractable gimbal with the camera. During the flight to the mission area and on the way back, the entire gimbal stays completely hidden inside the fuselage. It only extends outward when the drone reaches the reconnaissance zone. This design brings several important advantages at once. First, it significantly reduces aerodynamic drag, which helps the drone save energy, achieve greater range, and longer flight time. Second, with the gimbal retracted, the drone can perform simple and reliable belly landings. It simply slides on its belly without the risk of damaging the camera or the mechanism. When the gimbal extends, the operator gets a stable and high-quality image. Thanks to its special placement and protection from direct airflow, the camera experiences almost no shaking, delivering a clear and steady picture even while the drone is moving. The gimbal itself can rotate 340 degrees, providing a very wide field of view. Currently, the SOKIL is equipped with a high-sensitivity daytime electro-optical camera featuring 10 times optical zoom and an additional 3 times digital zoom, giving a total magnification of up to 30 times. The developers are already planning further improvements. A night version is coming soon, and by the end of the 2026, there will be a swappable payload module. This will allow operators to quickly change cameras depending on the mission, switching between daytime and nighttime ones. As a result, the same drone will be able to work effectively both during the day and at night. The standard endurance of the drone is approximately 2.5 hours. Under favorable weather conditions, it can reach close to 3 hours of flight time. Compared to frontline quadcopter reconnaissance drones, which typically operate for around 40 minutes, this represents a multiple increase in endurance. The standard operational radius of the drone is approximately 60 kilometers. However, due to its low cost, the platform can be employed in a one-way reconnaissance role when necessary. In such scenarios, it is capable of conducting missions at distances of up to 130 kilometers. The total flight range is at least 170 kilometers. The minimum operational altitude is around 1,000 meters, while the maximum flight ceiling reaches approximately 2,500 meters. An officer from the First Center of the Unmanned Systems Forces, who specializes in medium and long-range missions, recently shared an interesting story in an interview. While performing a combat mission, he accidentally spotted a bright white fuselage of an enemy fixed-wing drone on the ground. Against the background of the terrain, its white color was extremely noticeable. It turned out to be the position of Russian drone operators, which was successfully destroyed shortly after. This episode clearly demonstrates how important camouflage painting of the drone's airframe really is. It may seem like a small detail, but in reality, it can save the lives of the crew. Every launch, and especially every landing of an uncamouflaged white drone, strongly reveals the operator's position. Today, one of the biggest threats to fixed-wing drones is interceptor drones. Equipped with daytime cameras, they can visually detect white, uncamouflaged aircraft much more easily. That's exactly why the SOKIL already comes with factory camouflage coloring. However, we must remember that seasons change, and so does the color of the landscape. Therefore, it is extremely important to constantly study the current theater of operations, its geography and seasonal features, and adapt the most effective camouflage patterns for the drone's airframe. These seemingly simple measures significantly reduce losses among operators and lower the percentage of drones being shot down. To further increase the survivability of the SOKIL, VERY is currently developing a special automatic evasion system against enemy interceptor drones. The system independently scans the radio spectrum, detects a threat, and automatically performs evasive maneuvers, allowing the drone to quickly break away from an attacking FPV interceptor. Thanks to this, the SOKIL can avoid interception without requiring constant input from the operator. The operator simply receives a notification that the system has activated and the mission will need to be paused for a while. This development significantly improves the drone's chances of survival in environments where enemy interceptor drones pose one of the main threats to fixed-wing reconnaissance UAVs. Due to the real drone revolution happening right now on the battlefields of the Russia-Ukraine war, innovations are being implemented at an incredibly fast pace, especially in the drone sector. Without constant improvements and upgrades, a product can become outdated in just a matter of weeks. This is why a unique situation has formed in Ukraine. Drone manufacturers have established direct communication with the soldiers who actually use these drones on the front lines. These fighters, who work with the equipment every day in real combat conditions, provide fast and precise feedback, what works well and what needs to be changed urgently. Companies that failed to build this direct connection with frontline operators and did not respond to feedback within just a few days quickly lost relevance and demand for their drones. That's why direct communication with the military on the battlefield and an extremely fast reaction to changes on the front have become perhaps the most important factor for a company's survival in this highly competitive environment. That's why Vary Industries, even before the official market launch and mass production, sent several SOKIL drones to units with which they have close relationships for real combat testing. When the military learned about the extremely low price of this fixed-wing reconnaissance drone, they began sending it into particularly dangerous areas where they previously avoided risking expensive reconnaissance drones worth tens of thousands of dollars. One of the very first flights was already a success, with the drone completing a mission at a distance of 52 kilometers, that's 32 miles. In the Birds of Magyar unit, there was a case where, after a direct hit from a Russian FPV interceptor, the SOKIL lost connection at around 30 kilometers. However, thanks to its automatic return systems, the damaged but surprisingly resilient drone did not fall, continued flying, restored connection at 10 kilometers, and was later quickly repaired and returned to service. Overall, all missions during combat testing were considered successful. A mission is deemed successful if the drone reaches the designated area, conducts visual reconnaissance, and transmits coordinates of detected targets. At a price of only $4,000, even losing the aircraft on the return flight was not considered a critical failure. Based on the test results, the military requested the addition of an automatic target acquisition function for the camera to reduce the operator's workload, as they currently have to manually control the camera with a joystick. This feature is planned for future versions. At the moment, the company is focused on launching the SOKIL into mass production because the need for such affordable reconnaissance drones on the front lines is measured in thousands of units. In March 2026, it was reported that the SOKIL UAV had been officially codified by the state and became available for pre-order on platforms such as DOT Chain Defense and Brave One Market. Notably, it can also be purchased using so-called E-points, a reward system earned by military units for destroying enemy targets. In essence, this functions as a kind of military marketplace, a Ukrainian equivalent of Amazon for the battlefield, where units can directly order the equipment they need, primarily drones and related systems. This ecosystem was developed with the involvement of Mikhailo Fedorov and significantly reduces the time between identifying a need and receiving the equipment. The key advantage is the removal of intermediaries and bureaucratic delays. Units can directly procure the most effective solutions from manufacturers, tailored to their specific operational environment. It also dramatically accelerates the deployment of new technologies into real combat use. In fact, this entire system is so unique that it probably deserves a dedicated video. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. In practical terms, this means that military units can log into Brave One Market and order either an individual SOKIL UAV, priced at around 172,008 hryvnias, it's $4,000, or a complete system. The full package costs approximately $25,000 and represents a complete unmanned aerial system, including 3 fixed-wing drones, a ground control station, a communication mast with antenna, 3 navigation beacons, and all other components required for operation. If you subtract the cost of the 3 fixed-wing drones, it means that the entire ground-based infrastructure required to operate the system is valued at approximately $13,000. In summary, the SOKIL represents the birth of a completely new niche in modern warfare. The 4th year of the full-scale war with Russia has become a turning point for reconnaissance drones. The rapid development and mass deployment of FPV interceptor drones has forever changed the rules of the sky. What used to be relatively safe observers of the low sky have now become targets and, increasingly, expendable assets. Interceptor drones have reduced the lifespan of reconnaissance drones from hundreds of flight hours to just dozens. For the first time in the war, this has led to a real shortage of expensive fixed-wing reconnaissance platforms. This crisis forced Ukrainian engineers to rethink the entire concept of aerial reconnaissance. They created an affordable, mass-produced system capable of handling tactical reconnaissance on the front lines, a task that until now had to be performed by expensive and complex assets due to the lack of a cheaper alternative. It is important to understand that the SOKIL is not competing with existing high-end Ukrainian reconnaissance drones. Instead, this cheap and mass-produced workhorse is designed to take on the routine, high-risk missions in the near and medium range, absorbing the main blows from enemy FPV interceptor drones and freeing up more advanced and expensive systems for deep reconnaissance behind enemy lines. In that sense, SOKIL represents exactly what the Ukrainian military needed at this stage of the war. It fills a critical gap, a low-cost, long-endurance, mass-produced fixed-wing reconnaissance platform. It increases the density of reconnaissance coverage along the front, preserves more valuable assets, and ultimately helps save lives. Scaling up the production of such drones is one of the key factors in gaining the upper hand in this war of drones. If you value hearing an independent voice, grounded in primary sources and real frontline context, I would be very grateful if you supported the channel. Please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe. Your support helps this voice from Ukraine to be heard by more people. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.